editor's notes.
Oh, name and...
Do you want your name?
I don't care. I'm not as scared of anything. I want, this is something that needs to be spoken about and to encourage other women that, I'm not, I want my voice to be heard.
Okay, so
Yeah.
spell your first and last name.
My name is Tana Marie Munoz, and it's spelled TAWNAMUNOZ.
But I've been meeting amazing people. I'm not alone in my studio all the time. I'm calling people. I'm working with WISH, which is an amazing organization for women, and meeting all these unbelievably strong, mostly women and some wonderful men that are working to change what's going on in our own city and statewide with abuse. And these people just sacrifice. They don't work. They're not going into it for the money. They spend endless hours, and they're just delightful people. So for me, I just love meeting people. I love feeling like that what my art is doing is opening conversations and has meaning, and just the thought that I'm helping change people's lives is really exciting.
We know that here in Alaska, we have the highest per capita sexual assault, sexual abuse of a minor, domestic violence, and suicide. And so as a result of that, we're trying to figure out how can we collectively get the community involved in this, and so hopefully we try to at least stem the tide or eliminate this epidemic, because that's what we have. We have an epidemic. And so part of the thing that I have done, in addition to reaching out to the department, local PDs, here in the Ketchikan, for instance, Ketchikan Police Department. Of course, you got the DA's office, Department of Law, but we have the Women's Advocate Group, WISH, IROC, I believe, that's one of the women's group. And in addition to that, you need the community. It's a community effort, and so yes, you can have your different organization, law enforcement, Department of Law, the health department, and so forth. But if we can get the community to be involved in that as well, that's how we're going to be able to stem this epidemic. We need everybody. We need business. We need the Chamber of Commerce. We need everybody, as we say, all hands on deck.
In the past year, we've made a much more fervent attempt to get involved with the other agencies in Ketchikan that are providing more prevention as well as intervention programs. We participated in a 3-day summit that was sponsored by the governor's office, and one of the big take-home messages for me from that conference was that if we don't go upstream and kind of meet people in the positions of power in our community and talk about violence, that we really can't make effective change from the bottom up. It's really important for us to get to those people that make decisions and make changes with laws and with enforcing social norms in our community, because if we don't go about things having conversations except when people are in crisis, that there really isn't effective change, and there isn't a chance for people to actually talk about and imagine a community free of violence. If you've ever experienced violence or had somebody share their story with you, it's really, it's hard to talk about how and why men or partners, same-sex partners, but typically men, would be violent. We don't sit and speculate. When we're working with victims, we're talking about problem solving. We're talking about today and tomorrow. We're not projecting, world peace or, relationship peace and future generations. We can't talk about that because the immediate need is what we need to be dealing with.
Too late, you're right in the middle of it, and then you're like, what could you do? What could you do? Because he has that control and you have nowhere to go. I'm from California, and I was brought from California all the way up here to start all over. You know, it was supposed to be, you know, let's start fresh. You know, he's a Bering Sea fisherman, and we're going to start our whole life.
The big thing that I really wanted to say is, you know, I've heard the question asked, you know, what would you say to, you know, women who are, you know, wondering about their situation? And if you're questioning whether or not you're in a domestic violence situation, you need to talk to somebody. You know, call an advocate, call a shelter, call a therapist, a friend, a family member. Find somebody to talk to, you know, because if you're having those feelings, it's for a reason. If you're questioning it, there's something in your life, you know, that needs to be examined. And getting that outside perspective is necessary.
Basically, what we're doing is taking a tough subject and bringing it in a very safe environment and opening this topic to people who may not normally be interested in going to hear talk about a shelter. They care, but you know, it's not their interest, because domestic abuse is a community problem. And I've learned so much about it through these women, through reading and such, that you can't say it doesn't affect us.
When I met him, I was in the middle of a separation that turned into a divorce, a 21-year marriage. And I wanted out of the state of Washington. I had to get away from all the chaos and drama from my divorce. So I meet this guy who seems really, really nice. And one of the first questions I asked him was, have you ever hit a woman? Of course, he answered no.
I think providers often have some awkwardness about asking the question. And then sometimes it seems like until the woman has met you, maybe even over a course of a couple of years, there's a reluctance to tell you anything about it. And then at some point they're ready and they'll give the information. Somebody that has really dealt with the abuse and they've already separated, or they've, you know, sought help, they'll come in and be very frank. They'll openly tell you a lot of that stuff. But
it is hard, because I think during the times when women disclose or are at that point where they are ready to leave and kind of in the thick of it, that is the most dangerous time for those women.
But I chalk up my strength to my grandparents and the good people that they were, you know. Oh, when the ferry pulled away from the dock, I was so relieved that I was away from him. I knew I was safe. I was on my way to an even safer place at Wish. It was just like 3,000 pounds was lifted off me. I wasn't scared anymore. I didn't have to walk on eggshells. It was an amazing feeling when I finally got here.
All of these prevention efforts add up to social change. It does. It just, you know, a little event here and then another little event there, and you get different people. You're hitting different parts of the community that hear things in a different way. When we did the 1 Billion Rising, we were at the high school, and it was the junior varsity girls team, and you know, we got the cheerleaders involved, we got the pep band involved, we got the pep club, and you know, there was some jabbing and poking in the audience. You know, they were going, hey, you know, look at this sign says, you know, rape is wrong on it, and they're, you know, giggles and things. But they got up and they walked with us, and we walked around the gym 4 times. And the girls, I was just watching them, you know, the girls and the cheerleaders and the pep band, and we're going, yeah, you know, you need to, you know, own your body. You need to say no, and it's okay. And these girls were like, oh yeah, you know, and you know, yeah, I want to walk with them, you know. And they realized what we were talking about was anti-sexual violence, and that dating violence, it's an issue, it's a problem, and these girls experience pressure. And how do they stand up against pressure? You know, how is it that we as adults can help them stand up against pressure like that? So it was really neat.
My daughter asked my husband not long ago, do you love Mom? And he said, well, it's changed. It's commitment. Yes, I love her, but it's a different kind of love, and it's that love that lasts 20, 30, 40, 50 years that we need to model to children. We need to make choices, and I guess that's one of the things I've seen through this show and watching my athletic daughter with sports is choices. Winning teams choose to be winners. They choose to use each other. You know, the strongest defense. They need the shooter. They need all their players to come together and make a choice. So I see the show a lot like that. That we as individuals need to choose to be strong. We need to come together with strong other community members to help the whole team, the whole town become strong.
There's such a stereotype and a stigma out there with girls nowadays. You see it all over the internet and all over TV, and they're sold on how you're supposed to look and your role. And I want the girls to be proud of who they are. I want them to be tough. We talk about toughness all the time, able to communicate. Basketball is a game. Games are fun. But the tools you can learn in basketball, the communication, the teamwork, the pride, those things can carry on in life and make them more successful in everything they do, including their relationships.
And I want to tell all the women that are out there, you know, you got to step out of that. You got to just step out of it. It's going to be scary, you know, because like I didn't know anybody. I have no family up here whatsoever. But, you know, there was one thing that I'm a people person, but never did I ever think I would be in an office or even dealing hands-on with like women and things like this. And it's amazing. It's so rewarding. I mean, I wake up every morning and I thank the Lord for this gift He's given me. It's a blessing every single day.
Initially, I only worked with the victims, and then I started working with the men in the men's program. And I think over those years, I've learned to not be afraid of the men in their stories and how they came into the program, but to have, you know, empathy and some understanding of how they got there, but not to give them permission to continue their behaviors. We had an on-site evaluator come down from the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, who was one of our funders for our Batters program, and you know, we had her spend time with our program participants, and she interviewed one of our men, and then we had her interview the partner too. And when he first entered the program, he would come to group at night and he would be angry when he left, and he'd slam the door on his way out, and the night before he'd be going, I have to go to that group again tomorrow night. And she would be walking on eggshells that day, because she knew that it was going to be rough and that they'd probably get in an argument before he left. But over a short period of time, just a couple, weeks into it, where he suddenly came home after group one day and he pulled out the homework and he said, "This is what we did." And I get it. And it was just, like, to me, I'm going, are you serious? He actually pulled out his homework and showed it to you and said he understood something, and then he apologized, for what he had done. And then he realized that the things that were beyond the physical violence were violent as well.
What would I say to a man who causes harm to a woman? Get help. I mean, seriously, please get help. I mean, they might have seen it. They've probably, it's a sickness because they were either brought up that way because of their parents, but their parents were brought up from their parents, and it's a cycle. It just goes. Well, break that cycle, break that chain. You have to break that chain and seek help. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. Because there's something, let's see, you didn't ask me that I would say. Just don't give up. Don't give up whatever you do. Don't be embarrassed. And get the heck out of there as soon as you can. Get out, and we'll help you.